to our March colloquium, and especially during midterms week, so thank you all for being here. We are happy to bring Paul Hansford from Sinclair to campus to talk about data analytics or data science, and he'll share a little bit more about himself during his talk, but want to introduce him a little bit to you. So he's a full-time faculty member at Sinclair in the CS or IT department, and he's been teaching on the college level since 2014 at 3 different universities. He has a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science at Mount Union, Master's in Science and Information Systems at Wright State, and currently researching PhD also at Wright State.
Trying to figure out which way to go.
Which way to go with the PhD. And he has over 20 years of experience in information technology, and his work spans consulting with 200 companies and about 70 industries. And as you know, data is kind of everywhere, and so he's going to share with us a little bit about that. Currently, he's the point person for the data analytics programs at Sinclair and working to spread them across campus, and also involved in several grants with the NSF. That are active in several new adventures along the way. So let's welcome Paul and let's go.
All right. Yeah. While you guys are eating, I will talk fast if you guys listen fast. How many of you are fast listeners? Okay, great. 50-50. But it is afternoon, you know, like after you eat and you've eaten some of the chili over there. Yeah, well, maybe that's I don't know how that works. Okay. I did not know what to actually title it, so let's talk data analytics / science. How many of you are going into data science? So 1, 2, 3-ish. So do you count as into data science? Okay.
Yep.
Right. So I will cover just a few things. So just a little bit about Sinclair. We were started by a guy named David A. Sinclair, and he started it in YMCA to skill up people in jobs. 133 years later, there's one of the top community colleges in the world, 30,000 students. I think there's over 300 different programs now. Lowest tuition, largest workforce education provider, big budget, lots of people, and they are a vanguard elite community college, so we try to be rigorous as well as a community college gateway to other things. I teach in the CIS. It was the CIS department. They just changed the name to CSIT. And before that, I was a practitioner for a small little company in Springboro. We were 11 in size, but we would consult with very large organizations, mostly SMB, more middle enterprise than anything else, because that's what we have in Ohio. But we would largely service about a 1 hour circumference, but we were willing to go about 6 hours. But with the advent of technology, you can service all over the world with just tools like GoToMeeting, Zoom, and things like that. So, pretty nice to kick your feet up and to service wherever.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
You said S&B, S&B and S&B?
Small, medium business.
Oh, SMB. Okay, sorry.
SMB, yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Small, medium business. Wasn't focused on enterprise. We worked with a company called Infor. I don't know if you've heard of them or not. They're kind of equivalent to Microsoft, but privately held. And they $3 billion plus dollar a year company. They just got bought by the Koch brothers, I believe. So they were heavy investors, so billions of dollars there, but I don't know. How about this? It used to be that when you searched like Microsoft or Google, Bing, your search was really, really important. Everybody was trying to get to the top pages of the searches. Then something kind of changed, like Facebook and Instagram and some of these things. Now you fill out profiles and you like things and you heart things, and now your profile, your data, is what's really important. If you buy something at Kroger's with their loyalty card, they take that, they analyze it, they use it to give you coupons and sell you more, sell you better. So the data is probably more important than the software. We implemented a lot of CRM systems, and we would replace one to another. Guess what moved to the new system? The data, because the data was really important, the software could change. So data is everywhere. I think you've heard things like this before. Data comes from the Latin word data, and it just means stuff. But what is data, information, and knowledge is definitely different. How many have taken a database management class? Anybody? A few people? Okay, so you may have heard the terms entity, attribute, things of that nature, so you know the difference between them. Entity would be the equivalent of a table. Attribute would be the equivalent of a field, and the data that you store in that. So that's structured data. If you're talking data science, it may be structured data, unstructured, semi-structured, all that kind of stuff. So this is my really, really old phone number, so you can call it, leave a voicemail, and I'll never get it, so it doesn't really matter. I'll see if I can get this to work. I'm not sure. It's time for a quiz. So here's my fact. And so question, what's missing? What was this originally? Okay, good. Are you ready? So here's my fact again. So what was this originally? Is it A? Is it B? C, that was pretty cool. D, E, or F? How many of you in your mind have picked A? Nobody? How about B? Still nobody. C, just because you're a gamer? I don't know. D, or how many of you think the answer is E? Okay, so a lot of takers there, or F, some mystery that you have not seen before. Okay, so 50-50 on the last two. But the answer was nothing is missing. It was drawn that way. And so the question was loaded with assumptions, right? The question led you to believe that something may have been missing, but in fact, nothing was. So it's just data. It's just a circle or a partial circle. There was a guy back in the 50s. His name was Deming. How many of you have heard of Deming? So a few people, all of us who are gray-bearded have heard of this guy. So he came out of the quality management, and he went to the auto industry in the United States and said, "Hey, I'd like to help you build better vehicles." And they just said, "Not interested." So then he went to Japan and helped a couple of companies. I think they're called Honda and Toyota, and said, "I'd like to help you with improve your the vehicles that you have." And they said, "Absolutely," and they did. And then by the time that we hit about 1980 something, Ford, GM, and the other auto manufacturers were hustling to try to produce better vehicles than the ones that were coming out of Japan. So the point is, with this one, is data-driven ideas. He took the concept of quality management, applied it to the components to make them better. And here's a little, how many of you are going into AI, machine learning, something like that? So here's a little AI humor here. It says, "This is your machine learning system." Yep, you pour the data to this big pile of linear algebra and collect the answers on the other side. But what if the answers are wrong? Just stir the pile until they start looking better. So is that how you do math here too? No, just a quick game. If you're computer science and you know the answers to all this anyway, but if you're maybe if you're math, you may not be exposed to the computer science, but surely you know, like so 1 bit is a binary digit. Binary. Okay. Just checking. I was trying to start a Midwest movement, see if we could start it out of Dayton, start calling it binary, see how far we could get with that. But anyway, never mind. We'll save that one for later. You may have heard of centibyte or kilobyte, but those are really, really old. They were like the floppy type of things that they don't even have anymore. There are 1-0 type of people in this world, those that understand binary and those who don't. So you got the 1-0, if you know binary. What is the 1-0? 2, right? Okay. So you've heard of megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte. There's a small little company that was down there in Miami Township. It was called Teradata. But you know, how much is a terabyte, or maybe even like 2 or 3 terabyte? You could stick them in your front shirt pocket now. What can you get them for if you were to go to Best Buy? Do you guys use them for backups? Does anybody back up anymore? You ready to just do it all in the cloud now? Okay. So like what, $59 you can get a drive? Or what? Yeah, not too bad. So after terabytes, there's petabytes, exabytes, zettabytes. And now there are 1-0 type of people in this world, those who understand binary, those who have friends. I'm joking. That's not true. I have a couple of friends. But what comes after a zettabyte? Does anybody know that one? You can Google this. It's okay. Yeah. I see like multiple phones here.
It starts with a Y, doesn't it?
It starts with a Y? Yeah, it does. Yeah, so it sounds very Star Wars-like. I really like that. It sounds like Yoda, but but how big is that exactly? And so I know that that's 1 septillion bytes. That's a lot. I can't even wrap my head around that. But if you look at the infographic there, it has a terabyte and it has a petabyte that says 16 backblaze storage pods racked in a data center cabinet. I don't even know what that means. That's just a really lot of data. I heard that you could put your whole life on video and put it in one of those racks. I don't know if that's true or not. An exabyte is 2,000 of those cabinets filling up a whole city block. A zettabyte is 1,000 data centers taking up 20% of Manhattan. And then the last one, a yottabyte, is fill the whole states of Delaware and Rhode Island with 1 million data centers. So the next time that you go to Best Buy, ask for a yottabyte drive and see how that works. So there it compares a yottabyte to like GDP, and at that time for the world it was 61 trillion. So that was at 2008. I say, given time, the cost of drives go down. So it's probably like $25 trillion now. It's just, it's not 100 trillion. It's probably much, much more affordable. So that's a lot of data. After that, it goes Brontiobyte, GFbyte, Epic byte. And you used to be able to buy these t-shirts on ThinkGeek, but they took the website down. It's terrible. But there are two kinds of people in this world, those who can extrapolate from incomplete data. Anybody want to finish it? Going once, going twice, nobody's brave enough, and those who cannot. So anyway. And this gets bigger, right? The worldwide data is growing, it's expected to grow. If you're thinking about data science, this is a good time to jump in. It's created a problem. If we look at an internet, this is an old slide now, but if you look at the internet in a minute, these are the things that are happening in just 1 minute. What is no longer there anymore? Vine, so the young people spot that like that fast. What is there to replace that? TikTok. Probably. And so it might look something like this. How much data is generated every minute? There's a few new things there. Look at the Uber. There was not that many rides at the time, but now, how many of you have taken Uber rides? So a lot of people. So every year it gets more and more. This is another graph. Mondays, data does not sleep in. Either do Mondays. Okay, so this data statistics. The one that really caught my attention is that every 2 yees, 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years. And so I've seen several stats like that. It's really, I have a hard time wrapping my head around that, but I guess that's true. Here's the big V's of big data. You may have seen these. How many of you have seen that before? Okay, so here's the problem. You have all this growing data, and you don't have enough people that knows how to manage it, to crunch the numbers, and do analysis, and explain to some executive what to do next, right? So when you have a shortage of people in a high demand industry, what happens to the salaries? They go up, right? Because it's short supply and demand. And so maybe you've seen some headlines that look like this. How many of you, one of your professors talked about one of these headlines before in one of your classrooms? Give you a chance to read them. The one on Target, I could talk about that one for an hour. Have you seen, what's the Jeopardy one? You remember that one, Watson? It was like the cognitive computing AI. You see Moneyball, that was they turned that into a movie, right? Yeah. So I need to research that one just for pure research purposes. And so forth. And so you've seen the deep fakes where they can turn like Elon Musk and Zuckerberg, and you've seen them on all kinds of different channels. Here's where you know when you're a true data viz, when you're really committed to your work. This is what it will look like. So the big data is 2012. The one that I wanted to draw your attention to, what do you have, like a pie chart on your arm there or something? I'm joking. So the one I wanted to draw your attention to was the second one. McKinsey Global Institute predicted that by the year 2018, that there would be a need for 150,000 data analytic type of people. And it just so happened that this is blowing that out, saying the same thing in a different way. LinkedIn put out a workforce report, and they said that there was a shortage of 150,000 data scientists. They nailed it. They were right in the middle. That's really amazing. So there is a huge shortage of people who know how to do that. It's mostly on the East and West Coast, but it's everywhere. There's data scientists everywhere. One of my neighbors is a data scientist. I did not know that. My daughter was babysitting, and I talked to the guy and bought a couch off of him and said, "So what do you do for a living?" He said, "I'm a data scientist." I said, "We need to talk." And so, one of my first questions was, how much data do you have to clean? What percentage of your job is cleaning data before you even get to something that looks like analytics? And he said at that time, somewhere right around 80%. And I think it's better now because the tools are different, but that's a lot of cleanup. So they always give you perfect data sets in college, and so you can do your linear regression and all that. It's perfect, right? It always comes out. But in real life, you'll be spending almost all of your time cleaning the data before you even do any analytics. But anyway, but maybe that's not true here. Maybe they give you dirty data and say clean it up. So Harvard said the sexiest job of the 21st century. The landscape is changing. This is just for fun. Went to a robotics conference on Sunday. It says, bad news, robots can do your job now. Good news, we're now hiring robot repair technicians. Worst news, now we're working on robots fixing robots, and we don't anticipate any further good news. Have you heard like headlines like that the robots, RPA, robotic process automation, things that you can do with Python, things like that is going to take over jobs. It used to be that they talked about if your job was dangerous or dull or something like that, you wanted robots doing that type of job, but now they're talking about like a marketing analyst and people in the office, that your job may be in jeopardy too. So great. Maybe you've seen Dogbert. This one, I really like this one. You need a dashboard application to track your key metrics. So if you heard this in business classes before, KPIs, things like that. That way you'll have more data to ignore when you make your decisions based on company politics. Will the data be accurate? Let's pretend that matters. So that's what happens when they're not using the data to make decisions, right? You want them to move away from the gut decisions and not just the highest paid person's opinion. That's a hippo. It's not the animal, it's a role. And so it may, the analytics roles across the spectrum. About 2016, I went to Boston, was a part of a group of people, about 11 people who came across the United States, and we designed what they called a middle skilled data practitioner. And so some of these roles are kind of represented there. Data analysts, data practitioners, BI experts, and so forth. So not everybody will be a data scientist per se, but if you are, that's a really important goal to shoot for. But there's a lot of other roles in the middle that help us with those the data work that's needed. Data engineer is probably another one that needs to be up there. How many of you have seen slides like this? This is a good one. I really wanted to talk just a little bit today about more of the domain side. You see, if you're in college and you haven't had years and years and years in a particular domain, you're missing that top portion, right? Unless you have a background in some area. So this is an area where you want to grow deep so that you can be better at those other parts. Let's do some data science. And so here's what my friends think I do. Here's what my mom thinks I do. Here's what society, isn't that weird how when we think of the techno companies like Google, Facebook, Apple, and so forth, there's just a handful of them, and how much influence they have in our lives and our life decisions. So you're wondering, are they manipulating our lives, or are they just enabling our lives? So there's a good question for you. What I actually do, select spending from the others. So this is this SQL. So the World Economic Forum said that the emerging jobs that are coming out, look at number 1 and number 2, data analysis, scientist, AI, and machine learning. So that's really, really good news for those of us who are like, have math and stats, and you're coupling that with computer science. You know, the world is your oyster, that's for sure. Nothing new there, nothing mysterious, but it's good to know that you're moving in the right direction. I don't completely understand what's going on, but it sounds like this. Data plus science equals a pot of money. Maybe is that your motivation? Is anybody motivated? So 4 people are shaking their head, okay. I hope that your motivation is like deeper than that, but it's okay if it's not. But when you're just motivated for money, you know, you have a tendency to not go as long at something. You know, if you're solving problems, making a difference, that's probably what will motivate you along. So this one is not a trick question like the other one was. So what's missing? This has got to be interactive. If you don't talk, this is not going to be fun. I'm going to call on people. What's missing?
Where it started?
What's that?
What it started at?
Yeah, so maybe the historical context. What else?
What it is now?
What it is now. We don't know if it's good or bad. We don't know how it's caused. I mean, there's a lot of assumptions that can be roped into that, right? And so that requires translation, right? So you need to know what the data looks like, why, and the translation of it. Here's something that's interesting. This is just coming out in the last probably couple years, and I think it's going to come out even more so. There's the role of the data scientist. There's the IT, the executives, and they need to know what the data means. And so there's this concept of a data translator. I'm not reading on the slide to you, but I'll give you a minute to read the slide. You already got it? No, okay. I see some head nods. 2 people staring intently. Okay, they're looking away now. All right. So data must be interpreted. And so how many of you have heard the frog story before? The frog story?
In the pot?
No. Okay. So how many of you really love animals? Okay. Oh, man. All right. So I have 2 dogs, 3 cats, a fish, a lizard, and we've had other animals. I'm going to tell the story. It's going to sound pretty grotesque, but I do love animals. Okay, so a scientist had a frog, and he was doing an experiment. And so he sets the frog down, and he says, "Jump, frog." And the frog jumps, and he records how far the frog jumps and everything. And does that a couple of times, and then he surgically removes one of the legs of the frog. Sorry. And then says, "Jump, frog." And so the frog jumps. And he jumps not as much as he did before, and does this again and again, keeps recording it until he's removed all the legs off of the frog, and then he says, "Jump, frog." The frog doesn't jump. He says, "Jump, frog." Still doesn't jump. So he writes down in his log, when you cut off the legs of the frog, it goes deaf. So data has to be interpreted, right? You can come up with the wrong conclusions if you don't understand the context of the data. And so that's very significant. Data must be interpreted. So you can be very, very accurate or very, very precise, but then not hit the target. And this is what a lot of people say that new data scientists will do. It might look something like this. Maybe you've seen some of these types of slides before. The first one is, this is what you do in college. You start with a question. The question already has the data, and then you solve that problem. Everything's perfect. The data's all perfect. Then in the real world, they give you kind of vague data, vague questions, and then say solve it. And then you try to solve it, and then you find out that's not what I was looking for at all. Oh, okay. And you keep moving over and over and over until you think you're solving the right problem. Okay, so the really key thing to do early in your career is to make sure that you're solving the right problem, right? And you have the right data to solve the right problem, because some problems can't be solved. And so literacy of data, I think that this applies to us in data analytics and data science, but it also applies to the executives and the business people. It's a part of our job is to make sure that we understand our customers, and our customers may be executives, they may be middle managers. If we don't understand them, then we will offer the wrong solution to them. On the other hand, they need to understand what does a scatter plot mean? What does a two-key box plot and a whiskers chart, what does that mean? You may know that if you've done quantitative analysis or something like that, but maybe an executive may not. So part of your job is to raise their IQ and data literacy. And so, but we should do that for everybody and anybody that we can. Any questions so far? No? Okay. The right context. Okay, so what does, pardon me, it's not coronavirus. What do these two numbers mean? Okay, this is a little bit of a trick question. Some people threw up their hands. What? Nothing yet. Okay, all right. So I agree. Nothing yet. How about now? Still nothing? How about now?
Highs and lows for the day.
Highs and lows for the day. So with context, right, then we easily interpret what that means. That's not Ohio. Well, it might be Ohio. It might be 37 and then also 75 in one day. Has anybody seen something that looks like this, where the data is encoded with something that we would call pre-attentive attributes? And pre-attentive attributes help us to help others make sense of what they're observing. And so we do that in a lot of different ways. These aren't the only ones, but there's a few of them that are here. A lot of them are with respect to like data visualization and things of that nature. Here's all the different ways that some students have put into context the two numbers 75 and 37, and so far. So it looks pretty unique. Here's some more. Here's some more. I like the robot looking thing there. I don't know what that is. Is that supposed to be like a baby and like an old man? I don't know. But there's a donut. There's a donut one. It just makes me hungry for donuts. Here's some more, and so forth. Anyway, so data literacy is something that is definitely, there is a group of individuals that the Oceans of Data Institute called together, and they defined what they thought data literacy meant, and here's what the data definition that they came up with. It's probably the most broad view of the word data literacy that I've seen. In the past couple of years, there's even been some quizzes, and people are starting to do like data as a service. You've heard of like SaaS, right? You've heard of like things like that, but now they're starting to do data that way. The data literacy project was started by Click. It's one of the data tools that are out there. I've used it before. I dropped it for Tableau or Power BI, which are much easier to use tools. I was trained in Spotfire, but that's okay, a different story, different day. But it doesn't really matter which tool that you use or set of tools that you use, they're going to keep changing. What's going to make you resilient is if you can adapt to those tools over time. But data literacy is the foundation for what we're talking about, and then it doesn't matter which set of tools that you're using. You're applying the math and stats and using your programming skills to get to those things. So if business is blue and tech is red, and I don't know if those are the right colors to give them, we need people who are purple. And I'm only saying that because my alma mater was Mount Union, and we were the Purple Raiders, so I'm sorry. That's not really why I said that. It's because red plus blue equals purple. But so we need people who can translate and interpret data and paint their world a little bit purple and help those that need to be able to translate and make decisions. Has anybody heard of this guy, the first guy? Who's Jack Welch? Is that his name? Nobody? So he was like the CEO of GE. Yeah, so one person knew. Okay. Two people knew.
This guy.
Oh, yeah. Did he really?
Yeah.
He had like an MBA or something that he had going on there, like the 1 minute MBA or something. I don't know what it was, but it was like I see it out there all the time. But many years ago, he quoted this: "Change before you have to." I really like that. So if you know what's coming, you know what's at the top of the list, you know where you want to shoot for, and what skills may be involved there. Change before somebody forces you to change, right? And then be nice to nerds, chances you'll end up working for one. That's a Bill Gates quote. And so all of my career, I've ended up working for people who were like MIT, RIT, something T, but they were all nerds and they were all bosses. So if you're interested in that type of thing. So any questions? Here, I'll put my contact information up there for just a minute. And thank you.